welcome to the show Get Set Green. I'm your host Pooja Arvi. In this podcast, today we have our first guest for our theme Founders, where we will be talking about how charged up we are for future generations. So you might be surprised that what is this charging part. So today we have Nikita Baliarsingh, who is the founder and CIO of Nexus Power, based in Bhubaneswar, India. This particular startup is focusing on making biodegradable batteries and as well as consuming the raw materials available from agricultural waste. So, which sounds interesting and as well as I'm curious and excited at the same time to know more. So, let's welcome Nikita.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on this podcast, and I'm so glad to be sharing my journey with you.
Pleasure is ours. And also, Nishita was supposed to be here. And I must also tell you that these two girls are twin sisters. So I'm just making up like seeing one more part of Nishita in the same interview as well.
You know, the same, you would have sounded also almost the same. So I don't think you're missing too much. But yeah, I wish she was there with me as well. You would have enjoyed the banter that we have amongst
Yeah,
each other.
yeah,
But
definitely.
maybe next time.
Yes, sure. Let's see that. And now that we are on the topic, Nikita, I was more curious on the part like, given your background is not actually from, science or engineering background, but like, what is the parameter or a turn shift which sparked your interest in particularly batteries?
To start with, I would say we did not start with the idea of making batteries. It started off with just this passion for environment safety and sustainability. And the first choice we made was to actually make electric vehicles, four-wheeler electric vehicles, indigenously in India. But then when we started researching on building the vehicle and how you could, assemble the components and make it, we realized that electric vehicle is precisely a battery and a motor on wheels. Everything else is cosmetic design, so there was not much to put in there. But then, having said that, the batteries were fairly expensive for us. So we were freshly out of college, and to afford all of those components was not very easy at that point in time. Secondly, the batteries we realized that were being imported from international markets, and the raw material even today is not abundantly available in India. So
Correct.
there was a spark in the mind for both of us that this is one segment that has been less worked on, and it probably has a lot of scope because we need material which is abundantly available in India if we have to sustain the eco-friendly transition in mobility. Second, we also need a material which is not as polluting, something which could maybe just be recycled more efficiently, or something which could biodegrade like we do eventually. So these were certain questions that came into our mind, and that is when we were like, we have to start working on this in more detail. And that's when we started doing our research, started reading up a lot because, as you said, we were not from the science background, both Nishida and I, and it wasn't a very easy choice to make. But we had to go down and do a little bit of courses. Thankfully, during COVID, IITs had opened up courses for professionals as well, which did not, need a basic science degree for qualification. So I took up a course from IIT Roorkee, and Nishita managed to get one from IIT Madras. So we did those courses in energy storage systems, and that's when we got a hang of these scientific jargons, the research papers, and all of the basic research that we did. And then we decided that we have to plunge into battery technology. I mean, that's a sunrise industry. The idea was fascinating. It was a booming field, and we realized that not just mobility, but even the grid storage applications, consumer electronics, anything and everything powered by batteries could be our client. And I think that was probably a market steady enough to make that choice.
Big shout out to all the IITs where they chose to have all the people from non-science background to attend these classes and see you have one right live example here. So yeah, huge shout out for that. And again, how Nikita was talking about the huge potential of the market and being the supply is very less, and especially when it comes to the rare materials like lithium or few other important metals which are required for in the manufacturing of battery. Nikita, one more point which started running in my mind is, as you said this, you might have already seen quite a few instances where batteries catches fire, right? Because of the thermal heating and the amount of heat which is produced while we are using these batteries is humongous. And sometimes it becomes very difficult to manage these criticalities in designing and as well as manufacturing. So, did it come across to you like how to tackle this or how to focus on these parameters?
See, started off with the research on batteries. I think certain points were very clear to us that lithium itself has a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of, but quite a few concerns. If you leave it open in the environment, it actually burns and it's very hazardous for people and the planet both.
Yeah.
Similarly, even in the batteries, the heat that it creates and it catches fires, all of these concerns were definitely there in our mind. We wanted to address that, and that is how we decided to get into battery technology. But when we started working on it, we did not want to use lithium at all because the main aim was to have something more sustainable. So the first decision was to remove lithium from the batteries, which means that everything available in the market, all available research, products, samples, everything had to be kept aside and a fresh thought had to be put into the research. So that's how we started, and I would say we were lucky actually. We came across a book from our grandfather's library, which was about somewhere in the 1960s, which said that
Oh,
proteins have potential benefits in electrolytes. And since it said electrolytes, and that was just one line, that one paragraph. It was a Principles of Biochemistry book, as far as I remember. And because of that one line, I think vaguely we thought if it is beneficial with electrolytes, might just be good with the electrodes also. So let's just take a try. So we started during COVID 2020-ish, late 2020, and it was all lockdown, so we couldn't actually go to the labs and access proper scientific equipment. But we had to test the idea of using proteins, and we had to do it at home. So the first battery that we made, the first prototype that Nexus made was out of chickpeas and kidney beans because they were the only protein-rich products available at home. So we picked up chickpeas and kidney beans and made our first battery out of it. And believe me when I say we clocked 5 volts with that chickpea and kidney bean battery.
for a
Uh,
first trial, that is actually quite
yes.
victorious, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it was like we were like, yeah, we're going the right path. Let's just register the company and go ahead. So that gave us that kick to go and register. Until then, we'd not even officially incorporated the company. So that kidney bean and chickpea battery, and then we got 5 volts. We recharged it, and then we connected that to an LED bulb, and that glowed and it glowed for quite some time. So when that happened, that was, I think, our first realization that what we are planning to do is not as vague as it sounds from the outside, and that probably we've taken the first step towards changing what the battery ecosystem would look like. Because there's anyway plenty of research happening, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
anything can be your competition today or tomorrow. But at least we have something new that could also make a difference. So we started off, we officially incorporated, and then during this phase of research and reading, we also got to know about the air pollution index that used to go bad during winters for the northern plains in India because of the burning of
Yeah.
crop residue.
Yeah.
And again, being sustainability fanatics, we had this in mind that can we take care of that? Can we do something that residue part, and or stop from people from burning it? And we just thought because we are using proteins, it's a natural element, it's a nutrient. Plants and animals, they have it. Let's just try it. And we took up crop waste and we tried. And the first experiment was, it showed a lot of potential. It was a very raw, crude experiment and showed a lot of potential. And that's how I think the Nexus loop got complete. That we made batteries out of crop residue. But interesting finds from that was that crop residue was naturally cooler than available materials, so that heat element was drastically less. It did not produce as much heat. And we did this test comparing our batteries to the lithium-ion batteries. We just recently did that test. We ramped up the power on the battery. And we tested this with a company in Bangalore. They make
Okay.
motors. So we tested our batteries with motors and we ramped up the entire weight on the battery, and it did not heat up as much as a lithium-ion battery would. And that is because of the material that we use, proteins itself. So it's a very simple phenomena called biomimicry, where you make artificial products with enacting or mimicking the biological processes. So proteins naturally in human beings and plants are the energy storage and energy transfer cells. Mitochondrial cells, we all know that, we've studied this.
Yeah.
So it's just that principle we used in batteries, that we're using proteins as energy storage and transfer cells, and we're making batteries out of it. So these naturally, they have properties of charging faster, they have properties of not radiating as much heat. And as far as fire is concerned, it happens because of two main reasons. Either the battery is too heated up, or there is a technical short circuit internally. So short circuits and the connections is taken care of by the battery management system, which comes in way later once the batteries are made, and which is outsourced for us. So we don't make our own BMS. We outsource it from other vendors. But so that's a concern that would be on the connection part of it, which obviously in any manufacturing process we'll make sure that that doesn't happen at all. But as far as the heating element is concerned, the material itself is pretty cool, so that rules out the problem of fire because of the cell itself. And because we were looking at safer batteries and safe for people and the environment as well, this was probably a very safe alternative to choose when we began our research work.
The whole journey is, I'm not getting the right word to say, because like the thought where you started from chickpeas and then how it went ahead, where you realized, there was this particular book where you understood that the proteins can be used like as electrodes, and how the whole the conversion mechanism on the biochemistry part of it. So, Nikita, while you were trying these experiments out, let's say, like, did you have an understanding, like, sample test done? Because I understand initially when you did at home with all the chickpeas, you had this 5-volt generation capacity from that particular system. So when you started using this agricultural waste, right? Like how did you secure it? Whether, because it will also have the moisture content in it. So how exactly do you work on these aspects when you collect the agricultural waste? Can you tell us more about it?
Agricultural waste directly in the raw form. We
Mm-hmm.
process it and we extract our raw material from it. So moisture is basically just dried up and then we grind it and crush it. And then we put it into the filtration processes to extract our raw material. So it's not that I would pick up the stubble and just put it into the battery. That wouldn't happen. But there is a process involved, definitely. But the moisture in the residue itself does not bother us much. What we take care of is when we fabricate the cells, which is the last step of the entire process. We make sure it is in a dry room because it has to be a non-aqueous system of fabricating the cell. There, if there is a moisture content, then we would not get the right efficiency in the batteries. But in the initial steps, it doesn't really matter much. We just have to dry it off. That's okay, because we have to crush it ultimately. That's what we do. Having said that, because you mentioned the journey that Nexus has had, the first thing I think that happened to us was that book where we stumbled upon this definition of proteins. And then definitely a lot of research was done by me and Nishada, both of us, to understand the kind of proteins and what are the different principles of these proteins and how they can be used. And that is when we found a couple of research papers online where multiple of these ideas were mentioned, where somebody was using proteins with lithium-ion cells on one of the electrodes. Somebody was using it in the electrolytes. So we actually picked up, parts of these three, four research papers and then clubbed it together to do our first experiment. So that is when we got the 5-volt battery. But then when we moved to the crop residue part, naturally the voltage fell down a bit. It came down to about 3.2-ish, 3 volts, 2.5 actually. Then we refined it and then moved it. So now we get about 3.2, 3.6 volts. But initially crop residue gave us only 2.5 volts. But then yeah, that's how R&D works, I would say. I think the first thought in our mind was how do we make batteries last longer, because chickpeas and kidney beans is a very raw form, and
Correct.
it degrades in the environment also naturally, so it doesn't last more than 10 days. It starts to smell if it is chickpeas and kidney beans. So the first step after the prototype was to actually make more refined filtered batteries, like the real batteries, packaged so that you can have them working for at least 3000, if not 3000, I would say at least 1000, 1200 charge cycles. So that was the journey, that is what we spent, I think, 4 years in trying to build it from that first prototype to where we are today.
Splendid journey, because I understand chickpeas and beans. What happens is it comes from the food sector, right? And it has a particular duration before it gets spoiled. So using that for a long-term use will always be an issue. So it was a good move when you chose something which has a longer life cycle and it has longer recharge cycles as well. So typically, Nikita, if I have to say, what is the environmental benefit? Let's say if I have to compare a normal lithium-ion battery and a Nexus Power battery, can you give us like a brief drop downs? Let's say what will be the recharge cycle in each of the cases, and what is the amount of voltage we can produce, and what is the impact of both the cases
So in
comparing?
terms of performance comparison, we are almost at par with lithium-ion cells. I wouldn't say exactly at par or better than lithium, but yeah, we're almost at par. So if lithium batteries generally give out 140, 160 watt hour per kg, our batteries are about 120, 140-ish, 140 watt hour per kg. Similarly, with charge cycles, lithium batteries last about 1200 to 1500 cycles. We do about 1000, 1100 cycles. So it's somewhere in that range. But what is interesting is that these batteries are far more sustainable than the lithium alternative. Naturally cost effective because the raw material is cheap right now and it's negotiable, the prices, as compared to lithium, and it's abundantly available. So our batteries are cheaper than the available batteries in the market. For us, I think the prime focus is on the recyclability of these batteries and the biodegradability of the batteries that we make. So Nexus batteries are completely biodegradable. If you remove it from its vacuum sealed package and you put it in soil once the life cycle of the battery is over, it would naturally degrade in say 6 to 7 months or maybe 10 months time, which is not the case with available options. And even if it doesn't degrade completely, the recycling process is easy and more cost effective than for any other alternative available in the market. So there are certain things that add an edge over the competitors that we have, and that's why we've been building this with all our heart. More importantly, I would say for the planet and the people than for the profit part of it. But yes, it does add to, when you have a business, then you have to look at the profits as well. So that's how it
Yes.
works.
Correct, correct. You are absolutely right. And Nikita, when you say it as it is easy for recycling, I can you please elaborate more on that? Because it will have packaging, let's say, and it will also have the circuits where the voltage or the current will be passing, all power system will be there. So of course you will need some electrodes and you will need some connection capacity circuit level arrangements for that. So, like if at all I have, let's say for example, I have a Nexus Power battery, I disintegrate it and I want to recycle it, or I want to let's say whether it is going for recycling, one case where, and in the second case where it is directly going to the, let's say, landfill where it will get biodegraded. Can you help us understand this scenario?
So let me start with the first part. As you said, it'll have packaging, it has wires and cables for connections. So those are standard available products that we use. We do not change anything in that because the packaging has to be aluminum and it has to be metal. uh, because naturally there are industry standards and we can't tamper too much with that. So the safety protocols and the lightweightness of the batteries has to be checked. So the outer casing, the packaging, the wires, cables, even the BMS chips, it's everything that's available. We don't do anything. We don't touch anything in those parts. So those are things which can directly be reused as well. Once the cell, so the cell chemistry itself, once that is brought out and put it into the soil, the casing, the packaging, the wires, cables, the chips, all of that can be reused. If not reused, can be sent for recycling. The normal way these things are recycled. There's no innovation going into that part. The metal cases, the way there is reuse and recycle metals, that's how this could be done as well. So there is no extra effort being put into that part of it. Talking about the biodegradability aspect of the cell, we clearly mentioned that when you remove all of these packaging to the cell and you come down to the basic elements, the anode, cathode, and the electrolyte, which is the slurry, the coated slurry onto these metals. Once you come down to that, if you leave that into the soil, that would degrade naturally. So that does not need to be run through different processes. It can just be left into the soil. But having said that, we don't advise people to do it themselves. It's better to either, if we look at upcycling the entire project and collecting our batteries again, then we would do it ourselves. Or I'm sure the way startups are coming up, somebody would want to recycle it. So, giving it out or to people who are more used to performing these activities would be a wiser choice. But if somebody wants to try, they could try to dismantle and put the batteries into the soil, but not advisable, surely.
Next question, Nikita, because I do understand like handling waste and especially when it comes to battery waste is a very like skilled job. I would say it is not as simple as dealing with the normal agricultural waste. So my question was like, do you have any plans in your mind where you want to make it as a circular system? Let's say you told us like it will give you approximately thousands rechargeable cycle, let's say on an approximate. And after the intended use of the battery, do you also want to have a chain of supply where you want your like your customers to get it, give it back to you so that you can use it and refurbish and do things like that, or as you mentioned, like it can be rerouted to any startup which is currently working in this area for recycling this battery systems.
See, honestly, we haven't worked on those lines yet. Because that comes in once the batteries are sold, they are used, and then the usage is over, and it's like at least 5, 6 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So we've not really thought about that side, that do we want to make it a circular economy system and recollect our batteries and work on the recycling part of it. But as I said, that there is an opportunity there, and there are already companies working on battery recycling. But right now they're doing lithium. I think this will only be another SKU added for them, that they can recycle our batteries also. We haven't thought of it, yes, but I would say even if we think about it, probably that will be a little too much to take on our heads. First collecting the waste and making the battery in itself is a detailed process. And then going back and recollecting it and then getting into the recycling line would, add like another industry altogether. So maybe not something we are considering in the near future.
Okay, okay, understood. And now that you mentioned about all the collection part of agricultural waste, right? Do you have a centralized system or a decentralized system? And what is your involvement with the farmers as well?
Currently, I would say it's more centralized than being decentralized. So we basically reach out to farmer unions and we collect our waste from them. So in some sense, we don't directly interact with the farmers, or we don't have to
Okay.
go and convince them or talk to them ourselves. We collect waste from people who are already collecting it, and the
Oh,
ones
okay.
who already put it together and process it. So we don't go down to the field as of now. But if need be, I think if the future calls for it, we won't shy away from doing it. But just that right now we are at a stage somewhere between TRL 6, TRL 7. So we're doing our tests and trials, but we've not commercially launched it, or we've not even actually got into pilot level testing. So that is also about 6, 7 months away. So I think once the scales increase, maybe the operations or the way we collect our raw material would might need a change. But as of now, we are looking at aggregators to collect our raw materials. We don't actually go down to the field. But yeah, we keep in touch with the, if the benefits that we promise the farmers reaches them or not. But that's just one segment from the supply chain part of it.
your sales increases and there is lots and lots of demand for to maintaining this particular manufacturing process, it is also very important focal point where you need to have a constant supply of the raw materials required. So yeah, that would also mean. But again, given the stages which you are going through right now, like it is step by step process, I totally understand that. And Nikita, speaking about your background and why you wanted to come into the battery technology sector, can you also help us with the journey part of it? Let's say if we have any woman entrepreneur who wants to come into this field, let's say automotive sectors or battery sectors, what is that key guidance or key factors which you want to help them with, or you would you like to suggest them?
Firstly, I would say that deep tech is an industry, is a segment precisely that needs a lot of patience and emotional strength. As a founder, it's very important to be very cool and calm and composed in all highs and lows. Right? You cannot get too excited on the highs or you can't get too depressed on the lows because it's not going to be a linear journey. But the emotions of the founder has to be linear because what happens is you don't get too many people specialized in a particular kind of deep tech ecosystem here, so your team is very limited and they are looking up to you, to the way you are reacting to things, to how you are handling a problem or how you are addressing a celebration, and that flows from the top to the bottom. So if the founder itself is not emotionally really strong, a lot of things on the way is going to be difficult. Especially for women, questions around, because we talk about deep technology and people in India generally believe women don't understand technology. So you do get questions around that as well. When we started off, I remember, see, there are people who are very supportive. There are people who are very cordial and they encourage you a lot. There are a lot of motivators in the ecosystem, but then yes, there are these subtle gestures sometimes from people that pull you down a bit as well. So when we started off, we had a couple of these questions coming our way. A couple of these expressions used to come to us, which said that, "Do you even understand your technology? So who's the CTO? Or is your father or brother involved in the business?" These are questions that come in, and it's not just from random people. These questions come in from investors also. So I'm not generalizing it. I mean, I'm not saying everybody does this, but some
Yeah, yeah,
people
correct.
have these
Yes,
questions,
yes.
and it's for the women to have that strength to deal with it. So naturally, it's important that people are as strong. Firstly, second, deep tech it's more research. It's heavily dependent on R&D. So documenting every step is very important so that tomorrow if something goes wrong you have something to fall back to. At least you can read through and understand what went wrong where, if not throughout the entire journey, so you don't have to come back to point zero again. You at least can refer to your steps. So documenting every process is very important. More than your research, documenting your finances, documenting your operations, your vendors, everything is very important. Like every paper is very important when you are in a deep tech industry. Automotives, I'm not sure if it falls into deep tech completely, but anything in deep technology, whether it is biotechnology, it's space, um, it's battery technology like we are working on, material sciences, these are heavily dependent on very scientific research. And for that, documenting everything is very important. And also keeping those documents safe and nice so that anybody who needs it could refer to it. Even investors would want to see a lot of database from companies like us. So we have to document everything and we have to store it properly to make sure that we have evidence enough of the kind of work we are doing. And I think I have probably lastly things that I've learned from my journey is always be prepared for the worst. You might have a lot of plans in place, but sometimes things just don't go your way. And we have to plan our future, no doubt. We plan months ahead in time. But sometimes all of those plans have to change because one thing didn't go right. So, founders who want to step into this domain have to be prepared for the worst. You have to plan multiple options. You need to have multiple ideas in mind to cater to such situations that come in, and sometimes these things come in just last minute. So that ability to manage a problem or to swiftly react to a disaster, I wouldn't call it disaster, but yeah, to be able to manage these kind of situations is something which is a skill that I think people learn with time, but it comes in very handy. It needs to be there. Naturally, you would need a very supportive team also, because not everybody would resonate with your vision. Not everybody would align with the kind of thoughts and goals that you have as a founder. But the ones who will align would actually stand by you like a rock, and they will play your motivators as well.
So if I have to shortly summarize what you just said right now, it is basically first point would be to have a resilient personality where you are calm and composed and you react swiftly and make the decisions and take forward because you are the first person who your team will look up to. And the second point is to always have a documentation and a proper SOP based operating systems where you try to record and maintain the documents of each and every procedures and especially key point of financial matters as well. And the third point being like being prepared for the worst, where you are always dynamic and you always maintain that stature of having things, let's say taking things highs and lows with a peaceful and as well as challenging effect, so that you are not deeply affected by the things. And also you mentioned one point where you said like it helps you go back to the stage not zero. I like that because you can bounce back from, let's say, at least level 2 or 3 rather than going deprox level 0, correct? So that is one.
This sort of experience actually. Initially, we were not documenting things in detail. So when it is just me and Nishita, it's okay. We depend on our memory, and both of us are working, so we know she knows one part, I know the other. But when you increase your team size, and then you have gone from 2 to 10, and then 10 to 30, and then if you go back to ask, they're like, "अरे वो तो इसको बोला था." I asked that person. That person was supposed to bring it. Then you don't even know actually what happened, where went something went wrong, who did what, because nothing was written, nothing was documented. There was no SOP. So we couldn't even go out and find that, okay, where did things go faulty? So then the entire experiment would go back to zero and start from that very initial point of measuring your amount of chemicals again, measuring the crop residue again, because nothing was being documented. We didn't even know the quantity of crop residue that was used to the first experiment. So then we had to go back and restart. So then we started writing that you write it this time, so that if, say, person A has picked up the residue and person B is supposed to process it, at least they know that, yeah, this is the weight and this much is the amount I have to use. Otherwise, we were going hayward. So this is what happens when you increase your team size. If it is less number of people, it works in a word of mouth. But always better to start documenting from day one, so that it becomes like a general business operational process for you, that you document everything. So you get into that habit early, so that when the team increases, it's induced into them as well.
Yeah, it comes handy for you to, escalate all the learnings or the findings from the previous experiments to all the new journeys as well. So that is
Yeah.
one of the good point from your experience, I would say. But as you rightly mentioned, Nikita, the key factor is also finding the right people, right team, and also right investors at the right time. So can you please tell us like how was your journey? How were you able to find right people? I understand you have the luxury of having a sister who looks alike you and has a goal which is similar to you. So many of us don't have the privilege. So please pray tell what was the key point in getting your team in hand.
See, I'll tell you, I do believe there is no right or wrong when you start with your journey. And every decision you take gives you something in benefit. Either it takes you here or it takes you there, but it doesn't harm you much. I would say there's no right or wrong specifically. So
Yeah.
when we started off in battery technology, we thought we needed electrical engineers on board, because battery, and it's very easy to have this mindset that you need electrical guys to fix it. So we hired a few electrical engineers and we realized that it was not their cup of tea. They were only the battery pack guys, to go down to the cell chemistry level. We thought we needed chemical engineers. Then we had a few chemical engineers, asked them to do the research. So they also came back saying कि नहीं ये हमारा काम नहीं है. This is not our part of the work. So it took us nearly 8, 9 months to realize that we needed material science people in the team. And material science guys are the ones who actually work on cell chemistry, and because they synthesize new materials, they work on materials typically. So you need a material science professional to actually work in battery technology. And we had gone one step ahead. We needed people in material sciences who have worked in biotechnology because we work with bio nanotechnology and protein biotechnology. So that was the kind of specialization we needed. And we learned this after 8, 9 months of hiring multiple kind of people on board to work on the batteries. So every time we hired people, we thought that was the right bunch of people to do it. Every time we had people on board, it was like that's the right team. That's the perfect set, and they're aligned with the goals, and they would make it happen. But see, it took us 8, 9 months to only realize that the kind of people that we are looking for is not the actual requirement for us. So, what is important is to first understand the requirement that we have. Once we have the requirement, is when you know what you're exactly trying to scout. So, aligning with the vision, aligning with the goal comes with time. It depends heavily on the working environment and how nicely do people blend in and how comfortable you make them feel at work. So, the dedication to the company increases with the working environment. But the skill set is something that has to be present when you hire a person. So we've had our share of hiring people, of realizing that it's not the right fit, and then changing the entire team altogether. Then there has also been a time in the past 4.5 years where we found the right person, but they have not wanted to continue for too long, considering it's a startup and in Bhubaneswar, so they could find better opportunities elsewhere, so they wanted to head out. So then again, we've had to fill in that void. So we've had our share of these people coming in and going out as well. Uh, and naturally, we've learned out of our experience. So on the first instance, it really bothered Nishita and me a bit. It got to us that people are heading out, they're resigning, or we have to ask somebody to leave was I think the toughest task to do.
Yeah,
The first
definitely.
time we got electrical engineers and we had to tell them, no, sorry, it's our fault, and you'll have to resign. You'll have to look for other opportunities. We both of us were like, you do this, chalo, you do it, no, you do it, no, you do it. We didn't want to go and tell them that, you have to leave. But eventually, with time, today we are like really swift. If I don't like a person, if I think they're not adding much to the team, we go and tell them, sorry, you have to look for more opportunities. So it's these are things that people learn in the journey, and this is not something you can really be taught or you can gain out of college education or even courses. It's everything that comes to you, and this is something that you build as you grow as a human being. These are skills that come to you when you grow, when you mature as a person. And that's what it is precisely. So I remember building a team specifically, even today, is a little tough. In fact, so Nishita actually takes care of hiring at Nexus because when we started off, I took the responsibility on myself and I hired the first team with 5 people, out of which none of them showed up in the office. One of them connected online, and 2 months later, she also said that no, I don't want to continue. So after that experience, I said Nishita has to take care of it. Otherwise, we'll end up just being the two of us, and we'll never be able to grow. So Nishita took over the responsibility, and beautifully, actually. So today we are a team of good 30, 35 members and growing. So yeah, we are happy with the kind of people we have on board. It wasn't easy to find people like-minded ones, but we are grateful that we've been able to find them. And I think there is no thumb rule or there is no blueprint to get there. Again,
Yeah.
as far as even investors are concerned or vendors are concerned, you just try your luck, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you switch, try another one. That's how it is.
So basically, there is no, right set for you, or there is no universal right set for anyone. So it's what works for you may not work for others, and what works for you works for you. That's all.
Yeah,
So
I haven't found a particular universal template
yeah,
yet.
correct. Maybe let's hope and see if we can, and we can share with others as well by that time. But Nikita, as you already mentioned, when it comes to deep tech, right, whether it is biotechnology or life sciences, the R&D is the core part of it. So which will take at least solid 3 to, or let's say 2 to 5 years minimum at max. I'm saying sorry, at minimum. So the maximum can go beyond that. So investors will also have this, particular understanding that, for this or any particular deep tech startup, for them to give fruits in terms of profits, it will take time. So did you face any such instances where the decisions were taken for investment, or when it comes to the understanding from the capital ventures into particularly battery technologies? So how was your experience in those cases?
Uh, it, uh, it wasn't really as confusing or as daunting. But yes, a couple of years ago, when we raised our first round, which was back in 2022, investors were not as equipped with deep tech companies, and their idea of deep tech was not as open and not as fluid as it is today. I think it's because a lot of policies have changed over the years, and people who signed the first checks to a few deep tech companies have now understood the nuances of how it functions. So today the investors are more open to product research, and they are willing to put in their money into companies which might take 5 years or 6 years to just build the product. But back, I think even in 2020 or 2021, when the startup boom happened, I think people were more focused on D2C brands because naturally revenues, it was easier to
Yes.
place it in the market. So there has been this shift, and I think we are still somewhere in between that shift, where today the government is coming in with a lot of policies. Their focus is on deep tech. They are looking at building things in India, researching and developing products in India. So uh, the amount of government grants for this kind of a technology or this kind of an industry is also increased, and that also plays a very crucial role in actually building the deep tech ecosystem. So for us, we were, I think, lucky that we didn't have investors who were very critical about revenues early on, and they were open to investing in a company which needed 5 6 years to build a product and test it and prove its technology. So grateful, of course, we were lucky, I would say, but we did interact with a lot of investors. 150, 200 people we'd pitched to, we've spoken to for the
Correct.
first round, and out of that, we ultimately closed with two on board. Naturally, of course, you don't close with a lot of people.
Yeah.
You don't have too much equity, but yeah, out of I guess 200 or 250 people that we spoke to, probably 50 of them were very fluid about deep tech investments or climate technology investments. The remaining 150 oddish people were dicey in the very first go because they also have returns to give to their LPs, so they can't
Yeah.
block their money for long periods of time,
Long
and we
time.
completely understand that. But of course, the number of VCs now in deep tech has also increased. The number of people, even angels, investing in climate action and deep technology has increased far more than what they used to be. So the ecosystem is more fluid right now. It's more friendly and it's more supportive towards uh, investing money for 5 years, 6 years, long exit periods. They are open to doing this, and this shift naturally will help a lot of startups grow. Having said that, yes, there are companies that do shut down also in the deep tech, but that's a seesaw that
Part of
happens.
the job.
Yeah, you can't really decide from the very first go whether
Yeah.
a company would do well or not. But sometimes for women, people are more focused on the sustainability of the business than the revenue part of it. Because I remember we were also asked questions about, if you get married, what happens to the company? Will your husband take
Mhm.
over? Will your husband join the company? So these are questions that do come in for women. Initially, they pinch you, later you laugh it out. So that's how deep tech journey is.
Let's say make a small list of steps which any person who has to consider from the prototype stage where they know that they have uncovered let's say a part or a process or a product which can become big after convincing R&D trials and runs. So if a person is in that stage, how can they, scope up? Can you just give us like a small snippet of the steps which they have to take care of?
Uh, Depends.
Hmm.
If you have the finances in hand already, then the focus
Let's
is
go with the case where they don't have any finances with them.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So once we start with the initial research, we do our product prototyping. It's very important to have at least one proof of concept ready. So that when we go out to pitch to people to invest in the idea in the R&D, so we need to have the proof of concept ready so that when we are talking about the idea, it's not sounding vague. You have something to show them that we've experimented on this, we've tried on this, and this is the functions of it, these are the principles and the benefits. So this is a basic template. Like you need to be prepared with the USPs.
Prototype, even though it can be a miniature version of what you are actually planning to do, but with
Not even a
actual
prototype,
results.
actually, just a proof of concept.
Concept. Okay.
Yeah,
POC
just
is
a
fine.
proof of idea that you know what you're pitching to people or what you're talking about. Something like the kidney bean and the chickpea battery for us. That was not even
Mm-hmm.
a prototype. That was not even like the basic raw material. But that was a proof
Yeah.
of concept that proteins actually can be battery material, rechargeable battery material. So that would be the first thing to have in deep tech. That and with the proof of concept, you need to have proper defined USPs. Like how is it better as compared to any other product available in the market? What is the cost metrics tentatively? And what could be the further steps? Like what would you choose to do next until you reach the MVP or the commercially viable product? So the second would be to make sure you list down the investors who are willing to invest in that segment of the industry or that sector, because not everybody invests in everything. A lot of people are sector specific. So you list down people who are sector specific. Of course, you can pitch to sector agnostic investors as well, but generally sector specific investors will be more interested in a particular segment or sector. Yeah.
Any let's say, do you can you name few, let's say, if this is the kind of website or this is the kind of resource which they have to find where if they want to go into the climate space or if they want to go into the like electric vehicles, do they have any resources like which you are aware of and they should be known?
See, generally you can just do a internet search and you would get a list of investors. And then you can read through their thesis and you would understand the sectors they invest in and the kind of investments they do. So every VC has a website and their websites give you all their information. Beyond that, generally people post on LinkedIn as well. There are a couple of posts that you would get on LinkedIn where they list down a few investors. They list down the investors in different sectors. A very interesting thing to do also would be to hunt down for investment analysts in VCs and angel networks on LinkedIn and connect with them. So their account would also give you some information about the company they work for. If you are able to find the partners or the founders of a particular VC, then connect with them also. They do not accept it all the time, but sometimes they do. So you do get information from them directly as well. And LinkedIn is also one space where you could pitch in directly. You could drop a message to these guys saying that I'm building so and so product and so is the USP, and I would be interested to give you a detail if you would like to listen. If you would like to know more, let's connect over a call or discuss in detail or something like that. So that could be done as well. So once you reach out to them, then most VCs get back to you with a mail or a message or a phone call, and then they ask for more details and more paperwork. So that paperwork that you draft and document during your POC comes in handy now, because you have to send them all of this database in your deck, specifically the pitch deck. And then I think if the VC, if they have a preliminary approval from their investors, from their investment committee, then the discussion goes ahead. And if it goes ahead and then you reach the stage where the term sheet comes in. Then the due diligence happens, which is a proper check of everything we've spoken and talked about, which is a legal and financial due diligence, which checks the paperwork of company incorporation, uh, all the paperwork of the financial budget, the projections, the money we've spent so far, the shareholding pattern of the company, who holds how much shares. So all of this due diligence happens, and if everything is right and correct and apt, then the shareholders agreement comes in. So then the discussion happens on the agreement. If you agree on all terms of the SHA, and once you're willing to sign, they sign it, and then with a few MCA compliances, the MGT 14 forms and all that, you actually open the offer for investment in the company. Once that is done, then the money comes into the bank account. That's a typical investment journey. So once the investment has come in, I think the first focus has to be on deliver what you promised to the investors. Make sure that you make realistic budgets and realistic projections. So considering a deep tech company heavily into R&D, you might not be able to build your product in 6 months' time. So when you
Yeah.
give in your milestones, make sure that you give realistic milestones. Uh, People investing in deep tech know that it doesn't take 6 months to build a product. It could be much
Yeah.
longer, depending on the success rate of the experiments that we do. So these milestones have to be realistic and should be achieved. There could be delays, but try not to make too many delays. Otherwise, what happens is then the operations get sluggish, and then you tend to not grow too much as a company. So that's how it is. I think once you deliver your product and you're ready with placing it in the market, then just recognize your segment, whether B2B, B2C, and go ahead and sell. So sell is a different ball game altogether.
So, if I make a short summary of all the steps which you mentioned right now, Nikita, if let's say a person has any idea, a proof of concept that this particular uh, technology or process can work, basically even with no financials, the first thing which they have to do is like prepare a pitch deck with all the USPs, metrics, and supply and market data, and then they should move ahead to the second step where, as you already mentioned, they can use LinkedIn or few other internet searches, Google websites, where they can go through the segment who are interested in investing in such ideas. And after that comes the most important part where you actually go with the realistic milestones, because considering deep technology which we are currently talking about, it is very much important that you completely understand the nuances and not get into the idea that you will complete with your product within, let's say, 1 or 2 years, but to be realistic enough to understand and set the milestones in the same way where you are not exhausting with the unrealistic burdens, I would say. And third part is which you also mentioned, like now, like there are various government policies and grants which are also helping. So were there any cases where these were useful for you in terms of Nexus Power journey, Nikita?
Yes, absolutely. We started off with grants. We raised investments later, and
Mm-hmm.
we got a lot of grants from the government of India and government of Odisha as well.
Okay. Can
But
you
the only
mention like name of that scheme or grants
Yeah,
which
sure.
you
I
did?
don't mind mentioning the names.
Yes.
We started off with Tide EIR. Tide EIR is under the Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India. Then we got Nidhi Prayas,
Nidhi
which is
Prayas.
again under Government of India. Then we applied for BIRAC because we were into biotechnology, proteins and industrial biotechnology. So we got the BIRAC grant. We also got a few private grants. So HDFC Bank has a Parivartan grant, which is for sustainable development and sustainable companies. So we got that as well. Then we've got what else? I don't remember exactly, but there's another grant. Oh, we got Startup Odisha product development grant. We've got the Startup Odisha monthly allowance for the founders. Uh, and probably then we've got the follow-on also, which is the Tide 2.0. I don't know what it's. I don't remember what it is exactly called. I think Nishita would have actually been very swift at naming the grants. So that is like a follow-on investment kind of a thing that happens from the incubator side, like an accelerator. So they
Yeah.
put in some more money. So that comes in as a follow-on to the grant. So we do shed out some equity for that, but that's a very minuscule equity that we do. So
Mhm.
it comes down to valuation, but yeah, so grants definitely gives you the first capital required even before you can go down to investments. But
Yes.
the little concern with grants is that it takes a long time for the entire
Okay.
process to happen. So it's not like it would happen in like a month's time or in 2 months' time. See, even investments take a long time. It is at least a 6 months journey from the
Okay.
day you start pitching to the day the money comes into your bank account. Minimum 6 months. It definitely would be more. But as compared to that, grants would be say 1 year. Like
Oh.
I apply today, then the shortlisting happens and the scrutiny happens, and then you pitch multiple times. So until the grant money actually hits your bank account, it could be a period of 1 year, as opposed to investments, which takes 6, 7 months at least. So things take time. Each of them have their own pros and cons, and grants definitely is a way of saving up your equity. You don't dilute too much, but
Ah,
it
correct.
takes time. So you have to compare time versus your requirement vis-a-vis the kind of product that you're making, because not all grants are available for all kinds of companies. There are a few generic grants like Tide EIR, Nidhi Prayas. These are generic grants, but BIREC is very specific to biotechnology companies. So this also people have to understand. So before you apply, you have to do a background eligibility check of whether you stand a chance to qualify eligibility check or not, and then you could apply. And once you apply for a grant, you have to have two things in mind. First, that the timeline would be long. The process would take substantial amount of time. And second, that all of the money would not come in at once. So if it is like a
Right.
yeah, it comes in tranches. So if it is like a 40 lakhs grant, so you might have four tranches of 10 lakhs each, or whatever, however the grant provider decides. But generally, grants don't come in a single tranche. Investments also don't come in a single tranche. Like generally, it depends on the investor again. They might choose to do it in a single tranche, but generally, two or three tranches is what the even the investor proposes. So when you raise money, you have to have this in mind that make sure to budget your finances well. So if you are raising, say, once a year, then generally the investor would give you 50 lakhs first and have a milestone that you have to achieve maybe in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, and then they would give you the remaining
Ah,
50 lakhs, provided you achieve the milestone. That's how
okay.
the funding ecosystem works. So when we raise funds, we have to keep this in mind that that is why I said make realistic milestones. Because
Yes.
if you promise something and you don't deliver, then you don't get your second tranche. So that blocks your progress. So that's why you have to have this in mind that money doesn't come in at once, it comes in tranches, and the timeline is not very quick. It wouldn't be like an overnight story. It would need maybe 6 months or 1 year's time.
So, on an average, for a government grant, if you want to consider taking grants from government policies, then you should have an idea about it might take 1 year or more than that for all the scrutiny and then when it actually reaches your bank account. But one advantage with that is also that the equity dilution will be comparatively less when it goes for the investments. But again, if based on the requirement, let's say if you want it soon and you have the requirement of that, the investment would be the better option where you at least have an on an average 6 months or so time where you can deal with the investors and the amount reaching you, the time transaction will be that. So depending on this, please choose which is better for you and
So
which,
I would just add on here.
yeah,
I'd
please.
suggest people balance between the two. Like have
Uh,
investments also and apply for grants also. So grants, it could take lesser time also. It depends on the department that is doing the entire
where you are
scrutiny.
applying. Hmm.
Yeah, so it could take lesser time also. Also, another thing that you could do is be a part of a few incubators. Like
Correct.
we are still actually connected to the KIIT TBI in Bhubaneswar, and they have actually facilitated a lot of these grants to us. So that is also not a bad idea to initially engage with incubators, especially for deep tech startups, because equipment and sometimes machinery is very expensive.
Yes.
So these incubators generally have those machines, those equipment, and you could rent it out and use it. So you don't have to be very capital intensive to buy that machine or the equipment. So incubator support actually is very beneficial for deep tech startups. So somebody who's just starting up and trying to look at avenues of how to build it, I think one wise idea is reach out to incubators and try and gain some advice or suggestions from them. And they actually help a lot of startups grow. And in fact, if they find a lot of potential in your idea, again, the proof of concept is basic. And the proof of concept does not need to be like a very polished, hi-fi prototype. It just has to be a very raw, a very crude proof of concept. That would be required for the incubators as well, because they generally, these days, generally ideation is not enough to get into an incubator or to just be called a startup. Minimum proof of concept is required. So if they find it a lot of potential in the idea, in the proof of concept and your product, then they actually go beyond their limits to support the startups, and that comes in very handy in the long run.
Oh, that's actually cherry on top of the cake, because incubators being given that it will be mostly local, and many colleges and many unions have incubator system right now in India, which is also advantage for the person who is looking to start and build something out of in deep technology segments or sectors. It is a very good idea to associate or find the right incubators, grow with them, and not be too capital extensive, where you have to buy all the machineries for the testing, for the proof of concepting, and then to even do the trials or pilot systems. So that is a good advice, I would say, for the person. First one would be to check for the all good incubators available near and around you. Then have a good balance, as Nikita said, between the government grants and policies. Please check out all the websites where government is providing various policies with respect to the industries, because that is also a very important aspect if you have to consider going for grants and as well as investments. So, Nikita, overall, I think we covered and had an wholesome discussion around how Nexus came up, how we built, and thanks for being sportive, where you even mentioned like your journey with respect to the grants. I really appreciate that. And last part, what I would like to know from you is like, what is the expansion plan what you have for Nexus? How do you want to scale up this?
We would go, I think, the standard way. There's nothing extraordinary we're looking at doing here. Scale up would mean making, say, a lakh of batteries per month. Maybe, maybe to start with a lakh of batteries a year and then a month. So that's the planned journey. But for now, I think we'll start with the pilots first. So we are looking to do the pilots as soon as possible. And the pilot production unit would come in say in 5 months time or 6 months time, because there is a lead time of machine order and machine delivery. So that also has to be considered. About 5-6 months would be our ideal time frame to get into pilots with battery energy storage systems, basically the grid storage applications, and also with a couple of two-wheeler and three-wheeler OEMs. So that would be like a short-term scale-up plan, and then eventually, I think from there, once we have proper results of these pilots, and once we build a pedigree to make sure we can go commercial, we'll just open it up to the market, and I think start with these guys only who do pilots with us. They would be our first customers, and then we'd scale up to as many as possible, and then eventually, I think, go global. But yeah, we're also looking to do paid pilots. So I think when we start with pilots, we'll have them pay in some certain small amount of money so that we could start clocking in some revenues. Since when you have investors on board, you actually got to make them smile as well, and this would just add. So we are grateful, honestly. Our investors have not been too cranky. Because I mentioned the grants, I would like to mention the investors also. So Jito Angel Network was the lead investor, and Pontac VC, along with STPI, was our co-investor in the first round, and I Udaipur came in the second. So yeah, that's how it was, and we are still going on with about almost closing a third, with a lot of couple of people on board, which I think I'll wait for the official paperwork to happen before the names are out.
Yes,
But
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
so we're looking to clock in some revenues by the end of this financial year, which is March 2026, and hopefully we'll get there well in time.
Even I hope that you clock in the revenue and as well as scale up. And I hope that very soon it happens that where you are crossing, let's say, 1 lakh so batteries, and very hope that it can actually go global, right? And one more point, Nikita, like, have you considered patenting the whole process of it? Because that can also be crucial, right? Given the sector where you have big players, it is very easy for them to make a minute change into their system to include this part of technology into the existing, let's say, infrastructure. Have you considered that?
We have 50 plus patents filed already. uh, Not the process, but yeah, the kind of research work that we do, the material that we make, the design part of it, the fabrication part of it, a few processes as well. Yes, certain processes that are core to us. So we do have 50 plus patents filed, few granted, few in the process. So yeah, the IP part is in place. In fact,
Good.
interestingly, when we started off with the company, a lot of people told us that you have to change the name Nexus because you will not be able to sustain it for long. Nexus is a very common name around the globe, and multiple companies are actually named Nexus.
Yeah.
And for a trademark, we fought against the likes of Google and Apollo.
Oh,
But at the end of the day, just 3 months back, 4 months back, we actually won the trademark. So Nexus India is now
congratulations for
registered
that.
to us. Thank you, and that was a wonderful feeling to fight out with such giants,
Big giant.
and to still be able to win the trademark and hold it to us now. So typically, at least we are glad that we're not changing our name at all. So Nexus is going to stay Nexus for life.
Mhm.
That's what that's how important I would say IP is, and
Yeah,
now it is registered to us, so even those guys can't use it.
correct. It is very crucial, right? I understand, like, any person who is listening to this, you might have a very fancy idea, or which can be, let's say, a big billion-dollar idea from your side, but it is also very important that you focus on your IP rights, copyrights, because this plays a very big role when you want to expand, when you want to build. Because in a market, let's say, being a startup or a starting point, you will always be less and having less resources when compared to the big giants. So to have that edge, you should always consider having proper IP protection for any ideas, and especially if it involves deep R&D sectors where it is easy for big infrastructure guys to come in, pitch in, and make some tweaks and have it done. So
In
yeah, that's
fact,
one.
see, it's not just about having protection from them. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually, if there is a time when you realize that it needs a lot of money, and it's not something that a small startup will manage to do on its own, then those IPs will actually help you sell it off. So you would also gain royalty or money on that IP because you've patented the
Yes,
entire
yes.
process or your ID, your entire work. So the fact is that it's not just about protecting your work; it's also about making sure that you have document enough. If you want to do a technology transfer someday, or get a royalty on the entire operations that you did, or even if you want to scale up eventually, that IP is going to be your major asset.
So that is also very much important. And thank you so much, Nikita. It was wonderful discussion which I had with you. That's it for today's episode of Get Set Green. I'm your host, Pooja Arve. Thank you for tuning in to the conversations that matter. If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, subscribe, and join our community of change makers. Together, let's keep purpose meeting planet, one week and one story at a time. Until next time, stay curious, stay foolish, and let's get set to get